couple of weeks ago we talked about the less good season of Buffy being season 4, and the fact that it did have a few standout moments. So that's what we're going to tackle today. I want to start on the silly one because why not? Giles' uncertainty of where he stands anymore. He no longer has the library or the school that it was housed in, and he's very much a gentleman of leisure, which is how we say it this side of the pond. So what does he do? What can he do? What's his purpose now? Well, after a night of kind of complaining and drinking with Ethan Rayne, played by the late great Robin Sachs, with some great moments, like, "I've poisoned your beer." Just kidding. I love his delivery of that. I can't do it justice. That was nowhere near as good as that, but it is sad that we're not going to see moments like that, or new moments like that again. But yeah, in A New Man, Giles is definitely waking up a new man after that night as a feral demon, and it's a thread I've noticed that the highlight episodes particularly have this message of sort of the group's ability to communicate is harming how good they are together, and that really comes to a head towards the end of the season when they actually do come back together. That communication, that melding. But it is very much about communication. Giles can't tell anyone. He's trying, but the only person who understands him is Spike, who happens to know Fjarl. Handy. The supposed enemy is in fact his greatest ally. But he's, going round and, yes, tormenting Maggie Rolfe, which is great moment. It just makes him feel good for that little bit of time. But, no one is understanding him. No one knows it's him. He can't convey the situation to anyone, however much he's trying. But over time, is this change going to be more permanent? He's starting to enjoy the destruction and the terror a lot more. And Buffy, thinking it's just another demon, researches how to kill it. Unfortunately, if it was a real demon, but fortunately for the fact that it's Giles, it's not actually a fatal blow, but she does realise it's him because he looks so disappointed with her. And I love that. Even when the communications have broken down, there's still those little moments. I think we've all had, friendships that have kind of fallen on rocky times, and we've just had a moment that has repaired it, that has resolved it. And I think this is definitely one of those kind of situations. It's great. It's a great bit of sort of entertainment that tackles that. And like I say, does lead into that common thread throughout the season. And of course leads to the incarceration of Ethan Rayne by the Initiative, but let's ignore that whole Initiative part of the episode. The second episode is the Halloween one, of course, Fear itself, where if we see a new man as this is Giles's feeling of sort of being lost, not part of the group anymore. Fear itself, in part, is very much indicative of Xander's feelings of this. The other kids are off at college, but he's just on the periphery and, turns invisible. No one can hear or see him because that's how he feels. We have obviously all the other fears, Buffy's fear of abandonment, coming to the back of the Parker situation, and Angel, of course, the biggest kind of abandonment you could have, in her mind, anyway. But, we also have the fear of Oz losing control, the fear of Willow losing control of her magics, and Anya's fear of bunnies, which is where this whole thing really sort of gets silly. But, she does get Giles on board, who, has focus in this. He is the big hero. He comes in and he says, "Destroying the seal," Buffy smashes the seal, "will not destroy the thing, but bring forth the fear demon Gaknar." And that's a great moment, again, of that lack of communication. Although Buffy's always been very much kind of a bit gung-ho, where Giles would prefer to kind of research a little more. She does, it's not necessarily that their relationship's broke down that she's done that, let's put it that way. But, she's not paying attention to him, and that is really a thread that does continue forward. But, he saves the day, and, we see that this fear demon is just tiny. It's a tiny little thing, and I like the metaphor there. Our fears are just tiny. They don't have to rule us. They don't have to control us. We can stomp them out. Unless, you have, like, sort of massive anxiety conditions. But, as a general sense, yes, our fears can be controlled and aren't really going to do much to us in the long term. But, of course, no highlight reel would be complete without Hush. A great exercise in communication. See why I think there's a thread here? Of course, the communication between Riley and Buffy finally comes to that point of, oh, you were hiding that you're a monster hunter too. We need to talk about this. And I like the fact that it ends on that. You know, it's like, we need to talk. This is what this whole episode is. We need to talk, but no one is. You know, it definitely sells that point. But it's got the great creepy factor of these gentlemen who feel very much like they could come out of some kind of fairy tale. Not only with the little blonde girl singing, who is meant to be, I think, representative of Buffy, but everything about them, just the floating, the kind of very kind of handsy kind of way, the permanent rictus grin. It's just terrifying as an episode. It deserved to win awards, and the fact that it has so many great funny moments too, with Buffy kind of miming something that I don't want to repeat to not anger the YouTube gods here, but let's just say she was miming staking, not what they thought it was at first, until she pulled the stake out of her back. So it's not the only euphemistic miming that goes on in this episode. There is a moment with Xander and Anya after the whole misunderstanding with Spike. Even though he's got the chip, Xander thinks he's attacked Anya because he's got the blood that he's been drinking around his mouth. But of course, that's not the case. But he goes in ready to defend her, and of course she gets she's pleased at this sort of show of affection and a show of caring. So they go and cuddle. Yes, that's all they're doing. Keep it PG-13. But it's such a great episode. Every little bit of it came together well. And of course, we've got great performances from Charlie Brumley, Doug Jones, the other gentlemen, the crazy people. Such great physical actors who could really just lean on that. A lot of these people are adept, especially Doug Jones, at dealing with prosthetics and making a great performance out of that. And they all do it fantastically to me. But I want to end this with the weirdest episode of the bunch. Now, normally in a season, you end on your big high, your big finale, the big bad gets vanquished, you all go home happy, credits roll, maybe leave a stinger for next season if you feel like it, if you know you're getting a returning season. But they didn't do that. They did that the episode before last, and instead took us on a weird mind journey where everything was metaphor, everything was couched in sort of hyperbole and dreams and surrealism. But we got an exploration of where these characters were, are, and where they think they're going. Willow remembered the shy girl that she was, but she's shaking that off. She's got a new relationship now. She's growing as a witch. She's becoming more. She can do this. But of course, the first Slayer essence is trying to reclaim that. It's like, no, you don't get that. Buffy kind of just has her own sort of, understanding of what's going on. What is the Slayer? What is the source of her power? Is it death? Is it destruction? Or, is she not alone? Does she have friends? This is what this whole thing's about. And of course, she's the one who breaks the dream by having enough of it. We have Xander's great kind of apocalypse now moment amidst everything else. He's a lot of his stuff is obviously to do with his sexuality and how he sexualizes women. He's kind of a bit of an objectifier in many ways because that's just how his brain is and that's how he's grown up. But I think he's starting to see that's a bit weird. He's not objectifying Joyce quite so much, and I don't think it's just because she's older. I think there is a modicum of respect there. It's like he kind of wants to, but he's also kind of like, this is weird, I'm not sure. I don't think it's just because it's Buffy's mom. But the whole, Tara and Willow thing, there are a lot of men who would find that quite hard as well, and that makes sense that it's in his subconscious. But I think him not reaching it is a bit of his brain also kind of saying, look, these are your friends, these are people you care about. Don't think of them like this. I want to put that. I like to see Xander's growth into a responsible, decent human being. But Giles's sort of moment has one of my favourite parts of it, which is the whole exposition song. With members of Four Star Mary finally on screen because they're not going to be in future seasons if Oz isn't, and Christoph Beck, the man behind much of the music for the last couple of years or so. And it's just a great moment, that piece where he's trying to piece it all together But of course they vanquish the first Slayer's essence and just go, well, that was a weird dream, but at least none of you had the cheese man. And that's brilliant. I love the fact that, the cheese man was just this random thing. Everyone, I remember, was going on bulletin boards, going, what was the symbolism of this guy? And I think, eventually it just was like, there is nothing. This is just, when you have those weird bits of your dream that make no sense, that's this. But there was so much good, in these 4 episodes that it did give me those rose-tinted glasses for the season. I know now that was wrong, and the season as a whole does fail, I think, at what it was trying to achieve. But these 4 episodes really gave me hope, and that hope was definitely rewarded, I think. So next time we're covering Angel. We're on to season 2 of that. Then a month after we'll be on to season 5 of Buffy, with a random extra character thrown into the mix, because why not? What show doesn't do that after a few years? So I do hope you'll continue to join me for those and the other videos coming over the next few months. But until next time, as always, thank you for watching and take care.
Just kidding.